Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters, your Magic the Gathering source that helps you command your budget. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all their support. Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Commander's Quarters studio. Welcome to the show. So, Strixhaven and the Strixhaven Precon decks gave us a ton of new and exciting cards for Commander. We've seen powerful rares, incredible mythics, and awesome new commanders. And on this episode, I'm not going to be talking about any of those. Because today, I'm going to talk about the cards that you should not be sleeping on in Strixhaven. That's right, I'm talking about those unheralded cards that didn't get all the attention and the fanfare during spoiler season. These are the cards that you should not be forgetting, but you might have already. So with all that said, let's jump into these cards from Strixhaven and the precons that you should definitely not be sleeping on. First up, and perhaps my favorite out of this entire list, there's Plum the Forbidden. A weird name, but a cool card. It's an instant for 1 and a black, and it says, as an additional cost to cast this spell, you may sacrifice 1 or more creatures. When you do, copy this spell for each creature sacrificed this way. You draw a card and you lose 1 life. This card has a lot of flexibility, a lot of versatility, and a ton of potential. It's kind of like a flexible reprocess in a way. You can at instant speed sacrifice a ton of creatures to draw a lot of cards at the cost of some life. In a format like Commander, 1 life per card is well worth it. So if someone tries to wrath the board, you can instant speed for just 2 mana, get rid of all of your creatures, and turn them into card draw. And unlike a lot of other additional cost sacrifice cards, this helps mitigate the downside of such a card. You're getting multiple copies of this, so they can't just counter 1 spell to stop the entire thing from going off and you just losing a ton of creatures. And again, this doesn't even have to be a board wipe insurance card. It's flexible enough that before your turn, if you've got some tokens lying around, you can just sacrifice those to draw some cards. It can go small or go big and provide value either way. Decks focused around the graveyard and reanimation, tokens, aristocrats, etc. could utilize a card like this perfectly. And also, Magecraft triggers are a thing. So yeah, I think this card's got a ton of potential, and currently it's being slept on by a lot of players. But next up, let's move on to a completely different card with Professor of Symbology. It's a 2/1 core cleric for 1 and a white that says, when it enters the battlefield, learn. Now, learn means that you may reveal a lesson card you own from outside the game and put it in your hand, or discard a card to draw a card. Shortly after the learn mechanic was revealed, it was also revealed that learn is not going to work in Commander in that way. Or at least I should say it's not going to work in that you can go get a lesson because there is no outside the game in Commander. So I think a lot of people immediately dismiss any card with the word learn on it. And while that is justifiable for a lot of the other cards, this one it definitely isn't in my opinion. Because in Commander, for all intents and purposes, learn is rummage. Basically, discard a card to draw a card. Now that isn't card advantage, but it is card selection, and when you're in mono white, you will take whatever you can get. Elvish Visionary sees a ton of play in mono green. And although this is not as good because again, that's card advantage and this is card selection, still in mono white, you're gonna take what you can get. At this point, mono white players, this is your Elvish Visionary. So cast it, discard one of your dead cards in your hand, and get something else. And because you're in mono white, you can blink it, and then blink it again, and so on and so forth. I mean, if this card literally just had the text, when it enters the battlefield, you may discard a card to draw a card, I'm sure a lot more players would be considering this. So whether you're in mono white, or whether your deck likes discarding or rummaging effects, consider it. Don't sleep on it. Next up, let's talk about Quandrix Apprentice. It's a 2/2 human wizard for green-blue. It has Magecraft. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, look at the top 3 cards of your library. You may reveal a land card from among them and put that card into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. This is just straight up, whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, congratulations, you're in Simic, here's some card advantage. Now that card advantage is limited to lands, but still, it's card advantage. There are plenty of ways to utilize lands, especially in Simic. I mean, at a bare minimum, this is going to help you hit your land drops. And of course, in these colors, you've got more and more ways to get these lands into play to ramp you even further. So just because this is limited to just getting you lands, that's not a bad thing. Just picture it as your instants and sorceries now come with an extra land attached to them. And yes, I know I'm oversimplifying this card because you're not always going to hit a land, but chances are pretty high that you will. So if you've got a deck with these colors and you're going to be casting a lot of instants and sorceries, make sure you're considering this one. But next up, let's talk about another apprentice with Witherbloom Apprentice. It's a 2/2 human druid that costs black-green. It has Magecraft. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Again, extra value from just casting spells is a very powerful thing. This can drain all of your opponents and boost your life total, just for casting or copying spells. Now, yes, make sure that you're considering this card for a deck that has a decent amount of instants and sorceries. If you've got, say, a Golgari creature-based reanimation deck, then this probably is going to do a lot of work. But if you're in, say, a Sultai deck that's looking to sling some spells, then go for it. This can get your opponent's life totals low, or finish them off and keep yours up. Next up, these boots are Swift, but they are not Swift foot boots, they are Zephyr boots. It's an equipment for 1 that costs 2 to equip. It says equipped creature has flying, and whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card, then discard a card. There really aren't that many great pieces of equipment that give flying. And this one gives flying, and it helps you loot, which is card selection. So this helps get your creature through, and it gives you a benefit on top of that. Now, of course, Voltron decks can definitely use a card like this. But if you've got a commander with an attack trigger or one that needs to get combat damage in, this is definitely one to consider as well. And keep in mind that if your commander or creature that you're attaching this to has double strike, you're getting that trigger twice. So you draw, then discard, and then draw and discard again. Even without that though, this is fantastic card selection throughout the game. And for all that it does, it's a very efficiently costed equipment. Next up, let's move on to Tend the Pests. It's an instant for black and a green. It says, as initial cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature. Create X/1/1 black and green pest creature tokens with, when this creature dies, you gain 1 life, where X is the sacrifice creature's power. So basically, you take something big and you make it into a lot of tiny creatures. And when those creatures die, you get a benefit as well, gaining life. This is a very versatile card that can help you out in a lot of ways. If someone tries to take out a powerful creature of yours, you simply cast this, sacrifice it, and get a benefit. Your creature was going to die anyway, so getting a ton of tokens out of it is big. And if you've got a deck that's running some anthems like a Beastmaster Ascension, this can be huge. Let's say that you've got a creature with just 3 power in play, and Beastmaster Ascension, of course, is going to pump that +5/+5. So before your turn starts, you sacrifice your 8/8 to get 8 1/1s. But because of your anthem, all of your creatures are getting +5/+5, and that's a ton of power on the board. Basically, you just went from 8 power to 48 power out of nowhere. So yeah, this card's got a lot of potential. But next up, let's move on to Professor's Warning. It's an instant for a black that says choose 1. Put a ++1 counter on target creature, or target creature gains indestructible until end of turn. So this is a flexible pump or protection spell. If you've got a commander that needs to stick around, this is a fantastic way to protect it. 1 mana is easy enough to keep up, and again, if you don't need it for that, you can use it to pump a creature. And again, since that's a ++1 counter, that's a permanent buff. So especially if you've got a +1/+1 counter focused commander that needs to stay in play, this can be a fantastic card for that. But again, even outside of ++1 counter builds, it can be considered for a ton of other builds as well. I mean, Withstand Death does see some play in green, and it's got no flexibility. So make sure you're considering this small, but effective, and flexible spell. Next up, Mind Rot has finally evolved into Go Blank. Go Blank is a sorcery for 2 and a black, and it says target player discards 2 cards, then exile all cards from that player's graveyard. So if you've got a discard deck, rejoice. Or if you're just looking to add a piece of graveyard hate to really take down an opponent, use this as well. I mean, this is just insult to injury against a graveyard-centric deck. Not only are you taking cards out of their hand, but you're getting rid of those cards and all the other cards from their graveyard completely. So yeah, Mind Rot has definitely grown up quite a bit. And the final card that I want to bring up is Teach by Example. It's an instant for Is It, and it says when you cast your next instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. Now, yes, we have seen a decent amount of other cards like this one in the past. Double Cast, for example, is a sorcery for red that does the same. This one, though, obviously is a much improved version at instant speed, and it's a lot easier to cast. So if you're already running those double cast type cards in your deck, make sure that you keep this one in mind. It's an improved version, and again, it didn't get a lot of attention during spoiler season. Now, outside of these cards, there are other ones that I believe have gotten enough attention, but I want to make sure that I bring them up just so people aren't commenting, what about this card? You forgot about that one, or this one, or that one. So let's talk about some commons and uncommons that I believe have gotten enough attention and people won't sleep on, but still some people might. So just in case, here you go. Let's start off with Solve the Equation, Fracture, and Rip Apart. Solve the Equation lets you tutor for any instant or sorcery in your deck. So yeah, this is going to see an absurd amount of play. Fracture is a very flexible piece of removal that says destroy target artifact, enchantment, or planeswalker. Now, is this as good as something like Despark? I don't think so, but again, when you're in Orzhov, you've got a lot of options. So utilize the removal spells that work for you. And speaking of flexible removal, there's Rip Apart. It says choose one, it deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker, or destroy target artifact or enchantment. So yeah, this one can deal with 4 permanent types. Now the creature or planeswalker has to be small enough for this to take it out, but still, that's a lot of versatility. And speaking of versatility, there's Decisive Denial. It says choose one, target creature you control fights target creature you don't control, or counter target non-creature spell that 6 controller pays 3. So this is either creature removal or a way to counter a non-creature spell most of the time. And then there's Thrilling Discovery, which says you gain 2 life, then you may discard 2 cards. If you do, draw 3 cards. So this is literally just an improved Cathartic Reunion with a more restrictive casting cost. And then there's Expressive Iteration, which says look at the top 3 cards of your library, put one of them in your hand, one on the bottom of your library, exile one of them. You may play the exile card this turn. This is a ton of value for just 2 mana. You draw a card, you essentially get a temporary drawn card as well, and you get to get rid of a card that you don't need. And finally, let's talk about Stormkiln Artist, Reconstruct History, and Golden Ratio. Stormkiln Artist gets +1/+0 for each artifact you control, but that's not important at all with this card, because it also has Magecraft. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, create a treasure token. So this provides you temporary ramp whenever you cast any instant and or sorcery spell. It basically just gives you mana back when you cast things. So yeah, that's going to see play in a ton of decks. And Reconstruct History has a lot of text, so here we go. Return up to 1 target artifact card, up to 1 target enchantment card, up to 1 target instant card, up to 1 target sorcery card, up to 1 target planeswalker card from your graveyard to your hand, exile Reconstruct History. This is a 4 mana, return up to 5 things from your graveyard to your hand. Now, yes, you do need the right things in your graveyard to get a lot of value out of this, but even if you only have 2 things in your graveyard, that's still a lot of value. And finally, there's Golden Ratio, which says draw a card for each different power among creatures you control. Because Simic needed more ways to draw more cards for just 3 mana. Jokes aside, yes, this isn't going to benefit just a deck that's looking to make a ton of tokens that are all the exact same size. But there are a lot of decks out there with a lot of different creatures with a lot of different amounts of power. So Simic decks, have fun. And with that, this show is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what your thoughts on this episode are, and as always, thanks again and have a good one.